Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and today we're going to talk about what many of you have asked for a show about, which is the election of Donald Trump. What is his presidency going to bring for the Ummah? What is his presidency going to bring specifically for Palestinians and the Middle East? We're going to talk about this issue, inshallah, for this episode. And I'll be, as always, looking at the chat, at the super chat, and addressing any questions that you may have or any comments that you may have. As always, remember to subscribe to the newsletter. This is important because if we need to get in touch with you in the future, and we've been banned off of social media, then we can do so through email, inshallah. And the question of being banned off of social media is going to be very relevant to the Trump presidency and some of the new policies that they are looking to introduce, actually. So stay tuned when we discuss Trump's domestic policy and how it might affect social media platforms such as YouTube. You might have also noticed that below this episode, there is a blurb at the bottom of the video placed there by YouTube saying that Trump has been declared the winner of the election. This is kind of funny because I guess they want to show consistency because of what happened in 22. The election results in 2020 rather were disputed. Whether Biden legitimately won the presidency or not. So on any video that discussed Trump or Biden, there is a blurb saying that Biden legitimately won the election. Now, I guess to show even-handedness, they want to say that, oh, well, now Trump won. We have to make sure everyone knows that Trump legitimately won the election. So it's pretty funny. But let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what the future can bring with Donald Trump's presidency. And as I had mentioned to you all before, the only reason that Trump was allowed to even run for president was if he sold out. If he completely and utterly sold out his entire presidency. And that was the deal that was offered to him. We'll let you become president. You'll basically sit in the White House and you'll have that kind of dignitary role as a figurehead. But we run everything. We're going to run everything. We're going to select your cabinet. We're going to select the policies. And you're just going to sit there and look pretty. But it's really our administration. It's our presidency. This is very different than 2016. This is very different from his first term, where Trump was more of a wild card. He was someone who was running as an anti-establishment candidate. He wanted to drain the swamp. He wanted to bring real change to Washington. And that's the kind of message that the majority of the American population can get behind, because the majority of the American population does not trust government, does not trust mainstream media, is just tired of corruption, is tired of their lives getting worse and worse and worse, while the rich continue to get richer and richer and richer. People wanted a real change, and Donald Trump symbolized that kind of change. Now, of course, we know that during his administration, it was hijacked. If he really had a pure intention like that for changing the state of the American government and making it more populist, more for the people, if that really was his intention, it was immediately hijacked. And you see that there were special interests, corporate interests, and Zionist interests that quickly hijacked his entire administration within that first term. And now in 2025, there's no even presumption of wanting to root out corruption. There's no presumption of wanting to end wars in the Middle East, for example, or bring actual focus on internal affairs like the economy, healthcare, immigration. There's not really even any kind of semblance of concern or interest for that. It's just all Israel, war, we have to bomb Iran, we have to root out anti-Semitism. That is the number one concern, and that's indicated by what? His intentions are indicated by what? By the cabinet picks. He's announcing picks for his cabinet that will be in the White House, will be in his administration, and that's a very clear indication of what 2025 will bring in terms of policy coming from the executive branch. So we, on this episode today, want to look at these candidates. This is very relevant for Muslims. It's very relevant for what the future is going to be like in the Middle East and geopolitics in general. So let's get right into it. I did put a poll in the chat. You can look at that and tell me, do you think that Donald Trump is going to be worse for Palestine or better? It seems like right now the majority of you think it's going to be worse. 75% of you think that Trump is going to be worse for Palestine than Biden. Of course, people are going to blame a lot of Muslims for not voting for Kamala because there was an entire campaign to prevent Muslims or to discourage Muslims in America from voting for Kamala. And arguably that might have made a difference in a state like Michigan, a swing state like Michigan. But ultimately, I don't think that it swayed the election in favor of Trump. There was just such wide support for Donald Trump. You had demographics that don't usually support Donald Trump in those numbers supporting him, like Hispanic males. You also had black men increasingly support Donald Trump at levels that they've never supported any other Republican candidate historically. And also women were not as favorable towards Kamala as they had hoped, even though Kamala's campaign made it all about reproductive rights and abortion. So this, I don't think the Muslim vote really made a big difference. Maybe arguably in Michigan, and it had some impact because those votes, instead of voting for Kamala, they either went to Donald Trump or they went to Jill Stein. But overall, as I've mentioned before, like the whole approach from the Muslim community that we live or die, like our political relevance is relegated to just the polls. This is not the correct approach for politics. That is, if you assume that really the country is going to change by voting, you're ignorant about American politics and you're completely naive. So my message has been consistently that Muslims should be involved with politics, but real politics. Things that will actually move the needle, things that actually do make a difference, not going and voting. Voting, as you can see, who are you going to vote for? Kamala, who has been in the Biden administration perpetuating or funding a genocide, or are you going to vote for Trump, who's going to come in and basically do worse? So it's like pick your poison. How about not picking a poison? How about just boycotting the electoral process and exerting political influence through other means? And there are many things that can be done on that front. One of the biggest political tools that Muslim Americans don't really utilize is lawfare. Lawfare, using existing laws in order to oppose or to pursue your political interests. And other groups do this constantly. All other groups, especially Zionist groups, especially Jewish American groups, they're constantly using lawfare to cripple their opposition, their political opponents. Muslims need to be engaged more in this kind of lawfare. The problem with Muslim Americans, unfortunately, is a spiritual problem. They're cowardly. They do not want to be confrontational, to actually go to courts, to actually fight in legal ways. This is cowardice, unfortunately. They prefer to really stand in the back. Maybe if there's another group that goes and rushes ahead, like the ACLU or some other social justice organization, okay, then we're gonna like tag along. This is a cowardly approach. They're never leading. They're never leading. They're always trying to find space in what others are doing first. This has to change, because no one is going to fight for the interests of Muslims other than Muslims themselves. If you want to go and attach yourself to a civil rights cause or a social justice cause, it's going to attach you to certain commitments that you don't want to be attached to. Such as LGBT, such as quote unquote reproductive rights, such as, and it's not just the left wing, even the right wing. You've seen me promote some alt-right accounts or retweet them, and they say, oh, see, Daniel is a hypocrite. He's retweeting these alt-rights. He's committing Muslims to a alliance with the right wing, or alliance with the white nationalists, or whatever nonsense. This is such a simplistic understanding. I retweet on my X account, for example, I retweet right wing, left wing, Muslim, atheist, Christian. It doesn't make a difference, because this is a very low cost thing to do as Muslims, to amplify certain narratives that are anti-Zionism, anti-genocide of Palestinians. That's not a difficult thing. That's a low cost. It doesn't commit me. It doesn't commit my followers to whatever ideology that person may have. It's just a retweet. But, in terms of forming alliances, forming coalitions, like, that's something that is permissible to do. But the question is always, like, what is the quid pro quo? What is the requirements imposed on the Muslim community? And oftentimes, not always, there is this, from left wing especially, they require you to sign off on all of their causes. If you want to be at the table, you have to be at the table with the drag queens, and you have to be at the table with modern day Qawm Lut. You have to be at the table with the psycho-feminists who want to destroy the institution of marriage, and they want women to just take off their hijabs and become sex workers. You have to be at the table with them. So that can be more fraught, and that can be more problematic. Now, if the right wing is requiring us to adopt certain positions that are contrary to Islamic norms, then we obviously wouldn't want to have anything to do with that either. So, but anyway, my point is that we have to do more to be politically active, and we have to decouple and detach the idea of political activism with kind of a left-wing notion of political activism or a right-wing notion of political activism. We have to look at or decouple it from elections and voting and blaze our own trail. That's a challenge that I have for the next generation of Muslim leaders. And I hope that the next generation coming up, the young Muslims who are now in their 20s, or they might even be teenagers, you are more open-minded and you're more creative, and you will not have this disease of the heart, which is cowardice. Just being cowardly and not being willing to fight. You have to be willing to fight, and that means some people are not going to like you. That's really the crux of it. Like, some of this, like my generation, unfortunately, in America, these American Muslims, and the older generation, some of them, their fear is a fear of not being liked. We want the kuffar, and we want people to like us. And if you say no, or you try to do something for yourself at the expense of others who want to silence you or want you to keep you down, you're afraid of that. You want to avoid that. You just want to be a good little puppy. So I hope the next generation of Muslims, you're not going to be good little puppies. You're going to be aggressive. You're going to be tactful. You're going to be strategic. You're going to be bold. You're going to be creative, inshallah. That's the sunnah. That's what Islam calls you to do. All for what? All for the sake of Allah. All for what? All for the sake of Allah and the interests of the ummah, the interests of Islam. That's the kind of ummah first mentality that we have to inculcate. in our youth, in the next generation. You're the great hope that we have, and you can do it. We're confident that you can do it. And as long as we work together, inshallah, and we get rid of this fear, cowardice, this liberal mindset that has infected so many of the ummah today, unfortunately. So let's talk about this cabinet. Oh wow, subhanAllah, a pretty large super chat. Let me see what it says. Wow, mashallah. Being Muslim is better than my 300K salary. Saying Shahada is better than my American MD. Bowing my head to the floor to God is better than my paid off $400,000 home. Mashallah, brother. Yeah, being a Muslim is better than all of the dunya and everything in it. Having Iman is better than the entirety of the dunya and everything in it. To have Iman. That is a reality that we all have to recognize. And that's the real antidote to fear. That's a real antidote. That's the cure to fear. Because if you have fear of a person, or you have a fear of some power, of some tyrant, what your fear is, you're worried about losing something. You're going to lose your house. You're going to lose your savings account. You're going to lose your car. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your life. You're going to lose your job. It's a fear of loss. But you're not going to fear losing something that you understand is ultimately valueless, is ultimately without value. You won't fear losing it. Like, for example, if I have a napkin that I use to, blow my nose, and then I discard it, I'm not worried about losing this. It's nothing to me. It's nothing. That's the attitude that we have to have for dunya. The dunya is something that we are using like we use a piece of napkin, and then we discard it. We got our use from it, and then we discard it because the real value is coming from the akhirah. The real value is coming from what we do in the dunya that is going to be accepted by Allah in the akhirah. So may Allah accept all of our deeds. Ameen. Really appreciate your super chat, brother SYA. Jazakallah khair for your generosity. Your support really helps the channel. May Allah bless you and your family. Okay, let's look at Donald Trump. So the first thing to know, the most glaring thing about Donald Trump is that his cabinet picks are all rabid anti-Iran warmongers. They're all neocons, basically, calling for war with Iran. And that's the running theme. Like, that's the thread that connects all of these cabinet picks together. They're Zionists, and they're the kind of Zionists specifically that wants war with Iran. When we look at Zionists, there's two strands nowadays in Washington and in the halls of power. You have the Zionists that they obviously support Israel, but they want the focus to be on Ukraine, supporting Ukraine, making sure that Russia is not going to make gains in Eastern Europe, keeping Putin in check. That's what they think is the big concern. That's one type of Zionist. And those Zionists are more dominant on the left with the Democrats and in the Biden administration. And they would have been more dominant if Kamala had won the election. The other side are the Zionists that believe that Iran is the greatest threat. We have to give as much support to Israel to attack Iran. We have to spend all of these billions in budget on the defense of Israel, specifically to attack Iran. And those Zionists are more associated with the Trump administration, and Trump obviously won the election, so his cabinet is full of these types of Zionists. And Trump is saying and has signaled that he's going to shift the focus away from Ukraine, away from Russia. He wants that conflict to end. And that's a representation of what his Zionist handlers want. They want to have, okay, enough with Ukraine. Just make a deal with Russia. Let's try to focus on Iran, and even let's try to get Russia to help us with Iran by cutting ties with Iran. Putin needs to sever ties with Iran to isolate Iran so that we can more effectively neutralize them, eliminate them, and do what's called regime change. Do regime change and install our own puppet. And look at what Trump says, okay, in when it comes to Iran.
This case, Iran, that if you do anything to harm this person, we are going to blow your largest cities and the country itself to smithereens. We're going to blow it to smithereens. You can't do that. And there would be no more threats. There would be no more threats. But right now we don't have that leadership or the necessary people, the necessary leaders. We have two people, not one. We don't even know who our president is right now. Who is our president right now? We really don't know, but we have two people, not one, that only keep looking. And when you do that, when you just look...
So he's threatening to blow Iran to smithereens. And there was this claim that the assassination attempts against Trump were actually led by Iran. The sound is okay, right? Okay. Just making sure the sound was fine. So he's already been threatening to blow Iran to smithereens, to attack their major cities. And there's this claim that the assassination attempts against Trump have been from Iran. So they've set up, and we were wondering before, like, what is going on with this assassination attempt? You had the Secret Service with such a blatant oversight, not covering such a sensitive location on top of a barn while Trump is giving a speech just 200 yards away, just narrowly missed Trump. Like, what was that about? And increasingly, looking back, it seems like it was a deliberate miss or a deliberate attempt that was supposed to fail in order to start this narrative that Trump is going to be assassinated by Iran. And when that happens, the whole country, all of his supporters, and he has a huge base of hardcore supporters that are ride or die for Trump. If he were assassinated and it was pinned on Iran, then the whole country would be in support, or a huge segment of the country would be raring to go to war with Iran. Increasingly, that seems like the plan that they have. Eliminate it. Trump is basically the sacrificial lamb. Trump is the sacrificial lamb. I'm sure his Christian supporters will appreciate the metaphor, but he's the sacrificial lamb to be taken out and then it be pinned on Iran. You drive the American country, because this would be like a 9/11 type of event. The last president to be assassinated was JFK. And even the Democrats, who are not pro-war, they're not pro-war with Iran, suddenly, oh, you're not in support of war with Iran? You're not patriotic. You support the terrorists. You support the terrorists in Iran. That's exactly what they did for the Iraq War post 9/11. Just depict your political opponents as terrorists or terrorist sympathizers, unpatriotic. So that's the type of false flag that you can see perhaps playing out. Obviously, this is just speculation. But Trump has been very clear that he views Iran as the biggest threat to America. So maybe he's thinking to himself, he wants to prevent. Maybe he's thinking to himself, like, if I don't send the country to war with Iran, they're going to kill me in order to do so. So I have no choice. Maybe that's the kind of, maybe he understands that his own life is on the line. And these assassination attempts, 2 or 3 of them that have come down, he's gotten the message. He's gotten the message. You better play ball. If we don't go to war with Iran, if the U.S. doesn't go and strike Iran directly and get involved directly and leading the charge against Iran, then you're going to die. You're going to die, and we're going to pin it on Iran. And we've already primed the American public for that possibility. So you have no choice. Maybe that's what's happening behind the scenes. So let's go to another clip. This is not on Iran specifically, but just on the issue of anti-Semitism in universities.
And here's what I will do to defeat anti-Semitism and defend our Jewish citizens in America. My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support.
So the campus protests that happened last fall, especially, and then the spring, that was so damaging and so frightening to the state of Israel that they dedicated millions, tens of millions of dollars. They brought in billionaires, Zionists, and Jewish individuals like Bill Ackman to shut down these campus protests, to eliminate the campus presidents that weren't severe enough in shutting down the protests. So the Harvard University president, Claudine Gay, was attacked with a bogus plagiarism scandal in order to get her removed. Why? Because she's enabling anti-Semites. What does enabling anti-Semites means? Not expelling students who protest for Palestine. If you don't expel the students at Harvard University that are wearing their keffiyeh and waving a Palestinian flag in Harvard Yard in front of John Harvard's statue, that means you are an anti-Semite. You're enabling anti-Semitism. And basically, these pro-Palestinian protesters, what's really the message of the pro-Palestinian protesters is a second Holocaust. That's what they want to do. They're raving anti-Semites that are threatening the safety of our Jewish students and threatening the safety of Jews in America. They're basically Nazis. They're basically like second Hitler, and they're going to, if we don't shut them down, that means you're a Nazi sympathizer. That's how they eliminated. They neutralized Claudine Gay, and then using this a bogus plagiarism scandal funded by Bill Ackman, the Jewish billionaire, they were able to throw her out of her position. The first black female president of Harvard, Claudine Gay. They did the same thing at Penn University, and they were trying to do the same thing at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is also in Boston, Massachusetts. So that's all that took place under Biden. Now Trump, before he's even won the election, saying he's going to shut down entire universities in the sense of taking away their federal funding if they do not institute exactly the type of policies that these Zionists are demanding. So this is very serious. This is very serious. It was already the case that you had Jewish donors, Zionist donors, threatening to withhold funding from universities like UCLA, Stanford, Berkeley, UT Austin in Texas, all of these major universities, University of Michigan, were going to suspend funding as private donors if you don't shut down these protests. So they were already using that kind of leverage. It's just difficult when you are a university and you have this. The universities are the bastions of social justice and social justice activism. As in terms of American institutions, they're the main institutions that drive activism for social justice causes. So this, you're basically discrediting that institution of the American university if you prevent them from protesting genocide, especially a genocide like this that's so obvious, that is attested to by other liberal institutions like the United Nations or the UN's International Criminal Court or Criminal Court of Justice. So they're basically turning the idea of liberal protest into a joke. They're turning the idea of liberal social justice into a farce. Because as soon as that is shut down on the university campuses, then the jig is up. People will recognize, and the students will recognize, that these institutions no longer have the kind of moral authority to stand for freedom and justice for all, equality for all. That's the end of that. Why can't we protest against the U.S. government? We can protest against any other country, but we can't protest Israel? The double standard is so glaring that it's disqualifying. It's a double standard that's so glaring that it is discrediting. And that's the extent that the Zionists are willing to take. That's the price that the Zionists are willing to pay. They are willing to destroy all of these liberal institutions in order to preserve the most belligerent, genocidal regime in the Middle East, in Israel. It's pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking because you would think that you'd have a longer term game plan. Like, well, we need like these liberal institutions for the future of Israel. Israel depends on the moral authority of America. Israel depends on the moral authority of the UN. Israel needs that kind of backing, institutional backing on the global stage. But now they've gone so far in terms of the kinds of crimes and atrocities that they're committing that those liberal institutions can't credibly cover for them anymore. And rather than trying to find a compromising solution, or okay, let's pull back on the atrocities, let's pull back on our plans to ethnically cleanse Gaza, ethnically cleanse the West Bank, ethnically cleanse southern Lebanon, instead of pulling back, they've said no. Burn it all down. Burn it all down. American universities, burn them down. Make them openly hypocritical, openly pro-genocide, pro-Israel. Make the UN into a joke. Make the U.S. government into a joke. That's a price that we're willing to pay. So what is the prize at the end of the road for Israel? Like, why are they willing to burn it all down? It has to be for something huge. What is that? In the chat, tell me, what is the prize that they want? The answer is they want greater Israel. They believe now is the chance, now is their opportunity to establish greater Israel. And the first step, clean out Gaza. That's step number one, almost completed. They just have to find a solution for mass exodus to relocate all of these Palestinians. They've already killed, at the very least, they've just killed 10% over the past year and month, 13 months. They've killed at least 10%, arguably more, because I think the death toll is reaching over 300,000. 300,000 by the end of the year dead in Gaza. Clear out Gaza. Start clearing out the West Bank. And I think that's what the Zionists really want with the Trump administration. They really want the West Bank also cleared out. And I'll tell you the game plan, how they plan to do that in a second. But there you have Gaza, the West Bank. It's all no more settlements. It's just all under Israeli control. No more occupation. You've just ethnically cleansed everyone. They're no longer there. Then you neutralize Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon. You neutralize the Houthis in Yemen. And how do you do that? By neutralizing Iran. And therefore, you have become, by eliminating the threat of Iran through regime change, you have become the superpower of the Middle East. And look at the geographic location of Israel. It is the bridge between West and East. You have this massive superpower in the West with the U.S. You have the vassal states of the U.S., which is the EU, the European states. And then you have the superpowers in the East, China, Russia, increasingly India. And which country is geographically located, or what region is geographically located there in between those two power poles? The Middle East. The Middle East. So trade, look at the three continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe, all meet right there in Sham, in the Levant. Israel wants to dominate and control that so that it is the next in line to be the global superpower. And then so that's the prize. That's what they want. That's their future. It's a future where the 21st century sees the Israeli global superpower without having to depend on the U.S. Because the power of Israel for the past 75 years has been dependent on the U.S. And they're tired of pretending. They're tired of pretending that, they're not in control, right? They're tired of pretending that they're not, that the U.S. isn't their puppet. They want to just shed the U.S. and show themselves as the true power of the world. And what are they going to do with Al-Aqsa, or as they call it, the Temple Mount? I'll tell you what they're going to do. I'll tell you in a second. But first, let's look at his cabinet picks of Trump, because Trump is going to be the vessel, whether he likes it or not. Whether he likes it or not, he's going to be the vessel for this new Israeli century. He's going to be the opening salvo by attacking Iran. And this is understood by his cabinet picks, or is indicated by his cabinet picks. So here's a video that we can watch. This was credit to Reese Reports for putting this together. But he has a nice little overview of the Zionist picks for Trump's cabinet. Israel first cabinet nominations.
For UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik, who has received $917,000 from the Israel lobby.
Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil.
For Secretary of State Senator Marco Rubio, who has received $1 million from the Israel lobby.
Senator Rubio, will you call for ceasefire?
No, I will not.
Gaza?
On the contrary.
Senator Rubio,
are you filming it?
Wait,
so I want you guys to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes. And I hope you guys post that.
And what about the civilians that are being killed every day?
Hamas should stop hiding behind civilians, putting civilians in the way. Hamas knew that this was going to lead to this. So Hamas should stop building their military installations underneath hospitals.
So you don't care that 15,000 have died? You don't care about the babies that are being killed every day?
I think it's horrifying. I think it's terrible, and I think Hamas is 100% to blame. That's what I think. Make sure you post that, please.
For the EPA.
Yeah, so look at these rabid genocidal politicians. It's shocking the way that they talk, because he says that Hamas are raving animals and they have to be put down. But they believe that all Palestinians are Hamas. That's what they believe, and that's the policy of Israel. That's their policy in how they have been conducted this genocide. They are bombing apartment buildings because they say, well, everyone here is Hamas. Everyone here, and the women and children are also Hamas. The women and children are supporting or they're tolerating Hamas. Therefore, they are culpable They're just as culpable as Hamas for their crimes, quote unquote. So they deserve to die. And that is what the U.S. is funding. That is the U.S. actually sending not only weapons, sending military personnel, sending Air Force pilots, drone operators from the U.S. to go and bomb women and children, because the U.S. policy is the same as the Israeli policy, the IDF policy, that they're all Hamas. They're all terrorists. So that's Marco Rubio, nominated or to be a part of Trump's cabinet.
Lee Zeldin, who has received $916,000 from the Israel lobby.
You should not be coddling the largest state sponsor of terrorism, who calls the United States the great Satan. They call Israel the little Satan. They chant death to America. They develop intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, intercontinental. That's not meant for Israel. That's meant for us.
For National Security Advisor, Representative Mike Waltz, who has received $235,000 from the Israel lobby.
I think at this point, the only thing that is going to stop the Supreme Leader from his nuclear obsession is a very credible use and threat of military force.
For the Secretary,
a very credible threat of military force. See, they're all like pining for war with Iran.
of Homeland Security, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who serves to ensure the security of God's chosen people, and who signed a bill to conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism.
She literally signed a bill about protecting God's chosen people. I don't understand how that doesn't violate the Constitution. Clearly it does. But see, this is why lawfare is required. Like, these kinds of bills, if they're passed by a bunch of Zionists that have been paid off in the state legislatures or at the level of governors in these different states, there needs to be instantaneous lawsuit. That how can you have a bill that determines who are God's chosen people? That's literally the title of the bill, God's chosen people. This is a violation of the First Amendment and the Establishment Clause of the Constitution, of the First Amendment of the Constitution. So these are insane people. They're absolutely unhinged. And these people are, she's head of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, if she's accepted for that role. That's very scary for Muslims in America, because that's going to affect our ability to travel. That's going to be our ability to have organizations. They can accuse our Muslim organizations of being pro-terrorist. Why? Because you're pro-Palestinian, and Palestinian means pro-Hamas. They can have, for national security reasons, we have to shut down these Muslim organizations. We have to put them on no-fly lists. We have to block them from traveling. We can't allow imams from overseas to come into the U.S. TSA, that's going to be a nightmare. The airline security, Muslims are going to be increasingly scrutinized and harassed through the TSA. So it's going to make life difficult for Muslims domestically when you have such a person in DHS. Now, obviously, the previous DHS directors weren't pro-Muslim. They were also anti-Muslim, most of them. They're also rabidly Zionist. But this just goes to a whole other level when you're signing bills into law about protecting God's chosen people. That's a different level of delusion and psychosis. And then you have Mike Huckabee, this grifter.
For the U.S. ambassador to Israel, former Governor Mike Huckabee, who says Palestinians don't exist.
What happens next? It's about the end times. And quite frankly, some of us think we may just be living in them. So, Max Lucado, so good to see you. Thanks for joining us, and welcome as we talk about the end of the world.
Well, Governor, I wouldn't be anywhere else. I'm supremely honored to have these moments with you. And yes, I do believe we're not just in the end times. We're in the end of the end times. It's moving fast.
For the CIA.
Yeah, so they're talking about the end times and what kind of biblical prophecies have to happen in order for the rapture to happen and for Jesus to return, and this kind of eschatology that Christians, evangelical Christians, have. And it's all tied to Israel. It's all tied to making sure that Israel has its state and Israel is taking over the promised land. That's the biblical prophecy that they're trying to create. And ultimately, they believe that Jesus is going to come and wipe out any non-Christian, basically, because non-Christians won't get raptured. But the coming of Jesus is contingent on the children of Israel taking over the promised land. And the promised land is greater Israel, So genocide is part of their vision. Wiping out the Palestinians is part of their religious vision, and that's why they support Israel and war with Iran.
John Ratcliffe.
What Israel has done is essentially employ the Trump doctrine, a maximum pressure campaign, understanding that the only way to deter terrorists like Iran and their proxies is to put your foot on their throat. And Israel has done that. We should be assisting Israel in doing so.
For Secretary of Defense, Fox.
So assist Israel in attacking Iran means that the U.S. attacks Iran.
News personality Pete Hegseth.
Anyone that wants to take the stage.
Look at this psycho. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. This is insane. Look at this guy. Like a hardcore Christian. He served in the military in Iraq and Afghanistan, I believe. And he was advocating for soldiers in Iraq who were convicted of war crimes. He wanted them to get pardoned. He wanted to pardon these war criminals in the military, like his colleagues in the military who were accused and convicted, I believe, of shooting little children in Iraq, Muslim little children. And these are war crimes. You can't just be shooting civilians. He was saying, he was very passionately defending the right to commit war crimes. He said that, look, when there's a question of wrongdoing, when you have a question of wrongdoing by military personnel, you trust the person who's pulling the trigger. The person who's pulling the trigger is the trustworthy one. Not the terrorist, not this Muslim terrorist. You don't trust them. You trust the person pulling the trigger. Look how deranged. Now this guy is going to be in the White House for national security or for Secretary of Defense. This is the analog of Donald Rumsfeld back in the second Bush administration, George W. Bush.
Hegseth.
Anyone that wants to take the stage and talk about dual loyalty is dead wrong. What this organization represents, what Western civilization represents today, is an understanding that Zionism and Americanism are the front lines of Western civilization and freedom in our world today.
Zionism is the front line of freedom in the world today. So imagine like how deranged to think that and to conflate it with Americanism. So this guy is like the perfect representation of American Christians, at least the older generation. I'm hoping that the newer generation aren't psychos like this guy. He has crosses tattooed on his body. He's hardcore Christian, but he's Israel first. He loves Israel and is wanting to send America and American youth to go fight wars for Israel. This is a perfect representation of what Christianity has become. Christianity in the world today is just a vehicle for Zionist domination. Christianity has become a vehicle for murdering Palestinian children and genociding them, bombing Palestinian children with 2,000-pound bombs. That is what Christianity represents for the world today. And you have this Pete Hegseth, who is the poster boy for that, with his Christian tattoos and his slicked back hair. Isn't that like the standard mark of a villain in Hollywood movies? The villain always has this kind of slicked back hair. That's what he looks like. He looks like he's straight out of one of these movies, Hollywood blockbusters.
For the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, who has received $460,000 from the Israel lobby.
Not responding is not an option either. I mean, you have the animating force behind the evil in that region is Iran.
And for U.S.
Iran is the face of evil. We have to destroy Iran.
President Donald Trump, who received $100 million from Zionist Miriam Adelson.
Iran is not there for us. They want to kill us. And the Palestinians are taught to kill us at 2 years old.
The Palestinians want
dehumanizing Palestinians. The Palestinians are taught to kill Americans at 2 years old. And that's what Rudy Giuliani said. And Miriam Adelson, the wife of Sheldon Adelson, who is dead and burning in hell, or in the qabr right now, he is also one of the big Trump supporters for 2016. And arguably, he was the one who pushed Trump to take on increasingly Zionist policies. It was Sheldon Adelson who died. But now you have his wife, his widow, who gave Trump $100 million. You know what their wealth is from, by the way? Casinos. Like, it's all money that they've drawn from gambling. So you know that it's pure Satanism. And they're funding Trump with this kind of money in order to attack Iran. And what Miriam Adelson is reported to have wanted from Trump is the West Bank. We need to secure the West Bank. No more Palestinians living there. And causing us headaches, especially when it comes to international law. Just be done with them. Secure the West Bank and call it Judea and Samaria. And this is what is being claimed, that Miriam Adelson wrote that $100 million check and allowed and activated the entire Zionist network in media, finance, tech, to allow Trump to run for president, and knowing that if he were allowed to run in a fair election, he would actually win it because of the kind of support that he has and because of the disgruntled American public against the Biden administration. If you allow him to run, he's going to win. So let's activate the finance, media, tech, and also the justice system. The justice system in 2023 was not willing for Trump to run again. They're trying to hold him up in criminal prosecutions. They wanted him to put him in prison so that he couldn't run. That was the original plan. But things changed suddenly. In 2024, things changed, and all of a sudden, Trump is leading in the polls. And you have less of the media establishment that's calling him Hitler. You have less of the media establishment that's calling him completely unsuitable to run. And then you have someone like Mark Zuckerberg, the Zionist owner of Meta, saying, oh, I made a mistake in agreeing to censor Donald Trump. Actually, we're going to give his accounts back. And we're going to promote his accounts, by the way, back on Facebook, back on Instagram. He gets back on, all of his social media channels magically come back. Why? They suddenly had a change of heart? Unlikely. So this is his cabinet. This is the incoming cabinet, and the main theme is we're going to go to war with Iran. Then here's some other clips I want to share with you. How about J.D. Vance, his vice president, another war hawk?
A
A lot of people recognize that we need to do something with Iran, but not these weak little bombing runs. If you're going to punch the Iranians, you punch them hard, and that's what he did when he took out Soleimani. By the way, that action, people will recognize that we need to do something with Iran, but not these weak little bombing runs. If you're going to punch the Iranians, you punch them hard, and that's what he did when he took out Soleimani.
You have to punch Iran hard, not weak little bombing runs. What bombing runs against Iran? I don't recall bombing runs that the U.S. has done against Iran in the recent past. So what he's even referring to, but he's saying that even that, assuming that those bombing runs exist, that's not even enough. We have to punch them hard. So where's the public support? Like, that's the missing link for bombing Iran, for engaging in all-out war with Iran. You need to have public support, just like you have to get public support for bombing Iraq, engaging in an extensive war with Iraq, with Afghanistan. How do you generate that public support? That's the missing link that they're trying to figure out, because you have economic problems in the U.S. You have an immigration problem in the U.S. You have a problem when it comes to healthcare. You have a problem when it comes to jobs and unemployment. You have a problem when it comes to inflation. You have a problem when it comes to the strength of the dollar. People are having a lot of difficulty surviving in the U.S. And it's hard to convince these people that the most important thing for us to do as a nation is to get into this massive war that's going to be a lot more consequential economically than the war in Iraq, because Iran is a massive country compared to Iraq. Iraq is a bigger country. It's a more populous country, and it has more advanced weapons than Iraq did. And Iran has the backing of Russia and China. Those are things that Iraq didn't really have. So engaging in war, the U.S. is weaker than it was 20 years ago, and its opponent is much, much stronger than Iraq was 20 years ago when they first invaded. So this is a suicidal proposition for the United States, and the American public knows that. The American public knows that we do not want any more wars in the Middle East. We're not going to benefit from this. We're not going to benefit from this. So the whole question is, well, how are we going to build this case? And it seems like they want to take out the president. I think that's what they've been signaling. That's what they've been telegraphing this whole time. We have to take out the most beloved politician and pin it on some assassination. Oh, Iran wanted revenge for Qasem Soleimani. And they don't forget. These Iranians, they don't forget what Trump did when he took out Qasem Soleimani. They wanted revenge, and they said that they were going to get revenge. And so the most important president, the most beloved, where so much of the country just loves Donald Trump. And then you'll have all of these left-wing Democrats who for years were actually mocking the idea of Donald Trump being assassinated because he's Hitler. He's basically the second coming of Hitler. He's bad orange man. Suddenly they're going to start being so sad about Donald Trump. Oh, Donald, these terrorists took you out. This is unacceptable. We need full-on war with Iran. So Rachel Maddow, she's going to be the first one to call for war with Iran for taking out the beloved Donald Trump. So again, I'm not saying that I have any information about this. This is the nature of a false flag. This is the nature of false flag operations, and Western powers for most of the 20th century and the 21st century has engaged in this tactic. So I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that they don't do anything against the president in order to start war with Iran. I hope they don't do anything like that. But unfortunately, the indications increasingly are that that's the only way. That's the kind of false flag. I mean, there are other false flags that can be done as well, but you have a public that is so much more cynical than they were 20 years ago, and you have social media that allows people to really investigate or debunk any type of false flag. And people are cynical now. They expect it. They expect these kinds of things to be pulled off. And the whole efficacy of a false flag is that it's a psychological operation. It's a psyop. You want to convince people that there's a perpetrator who is really not the perpetrator. It was you. That's the whole purpose of a false flag. But if people aren't convinced, then it fails. You won't get that mandate from the public to go and attack Iran if they all doubt that Iran was really the perpetrator. And they're going to be they're going to be much more likely to doubt it. Why? Because that's exactly what happened 20 years ago. That's exactly what happened in a particular event 21 years ago. And the majority of the public, when it comes to that particular event 21 years ago, or not 21 years ago, 23 years ago, they don't believe that the official narrative is correct. They doubt the official narrative. So that the TikTok generation is not going to buy a obvious false flag like they would have, like the same kind of people would have 20 years ago or 25 years ago or 30 years ago or 50 years ago. This is the challenge that they have. Now, here's another clip by Hegseth.
Sometimes you have moments, Steve, and I happen to believe that we can't kick the can down the road any longer in trying to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. They used the killing of Soleimani as an excuse to say, we're scrapping the Iran deal. We all know they were scrapping it anyway. So what better time than now to say, we're starting the clock. You've got a week. You've got X amount of time before we start taking out your energy production facilities. We take out key infrastructure. We take out your missile sites. We take out nuclear developments. We take out popular capabilities. Or, you know what, take out a Quds headquarters while you're at it if you want. I understand that's not a popular idea.
But I understand, I've been hearing that we believe that the...
So do basically what Israel did to Gaza, what they're trying to do in Lebanon, take out key infrastructure, starve the population of Iran, make them suffer. This is an advocate for war crimes, literally, like he's advocating for war crimes in the past and now today. He's a perpetrator of war crimes, arguably himself. And this is how he's talking about attacking Iran. Attack their key infrastructure. So just think about shock and awe that the U.S. used against Iraq when they launched that illegal war against Iraq, and how many they killed, over 1 million Iraqis. And a lot of it was done through this kind of bombing, mass carpet bombing of Iraqi infrastructure in Baghdad and Mosul and other places, Fallujah. And now they want to do the same thing in Iran. Just eliminate the country, basically. Cause mass death and destruction.
The Iranians are hiding missiles and weapons in some of these cultural sites, churches,
of course they do.
Mosques.
This is...
Iran is hiding, just like Palestinians were hiding weapons under hospitals and under daycares and under schools. Iran is doing the same thing. They're hiding their missiles, according to these terrorists. They're hiding their missiles under mosques. They're hiding their missiles under schools, under daycare centers, under hospitals, under universities.
This is what Islamists do. It's what they've done on the battlefield against folks like me and my entire generation. Human shields, using mosques, using hospitals, schools. This is what our enemies do. Now, that doesn't mean we go on and target cultural sites, but what it means is we are clear-eyed about how our enemies use the rules that we write against us. And if we want to defeat them, this is something, having seen it, if we want to defeat them, we have to think smart about how these rules, how we navigate within these rules without playing in a game that's rigged to help them so that we can't win. If we're going to fight to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb, this regime, then we need to rewrite the rules that are advantageous to us. I don't want to hit cultural sites on purpose.
Yeah, the rule-based order that the West is always talking about. We follow the rules, yeah. You follow the rules, and then when they're not convenient, you don't follow the rules, or you rewrite the rules. Like, he's literally advocating for war crimes. And that's why I think that this guy is not going to really last as Secretary of Defense. I think Trump is going to be pressured to get rid of him because he's too in your face. And that's not really the way that these Zionists like to play this game. They don't like to have someone that is so in your face. But the fact that he has been nominated and is likely going to be on the cabinet tells me that they're desperate. Like, they're desperate for in that they have to bring this cowboy who is just openly talking about war crimes. They're bringing him into this position of prominence. That tells me that they're very desperate, and they're not patient at all. They're tired of they're trying to make things happen fast. There's no longer this patience waiting for the right kind of person with the right kind of optics. We're going to have a guy with crosses tattooed on his chest. He looks like a Nazi. He has his slick back hair. He goes on Fox News and talks about bombing mosques and hospitals and cultural centers. And we have to rewrite the rules to make that happen. This is our guy. What does that tell you? It signals that they're desperate. So if he lasts, but likely, it's just too much. Trump is not going to keep him on board for very long. He's going to be pressured to replace him.
But if you're using one to harbor your most dangerous weapons, then that should be on the target list.
And the president did.
That should be on the target list too, is the mosques. Another clip.
The question is, do we want to be at war with them or actively at war with them? Is it enough of a problem that it should be a focus of American foreign policy? After the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's little appetite for the idea of regime change or nation building. However, Iran with a bomb is a really big problem. So let Israel deal with that.
Why
See, look at this report was about Iran will keep trying to assassinate Trump. Look at the narrative. Iran will keep trying, as if they tried before. Whereas it hasn't been, there's no evidence, there's no proof that Iran has been trying to assassinate Trump. But Fox News and other mainstream media outlets reported as Iran will keep trying to assassinate Trump. And eventually social media is going to crack down as well. If you claim that Iran is not trying to assassinate Trump, that's disinformation. You're spreading misinformation about Trump and Iran. You're going to get banned. Only those who acknowledge that Iran has this plot to assassinate Trump are going to be allowed on social media. So, yeah, and where's all the intelligence coming from about the supposed Iranian plot? It's all coming from Israel. Israel is providing the supposed intelligence because the U.S. intelligence apparatus is inexorably tied with Mossad and Israeli intelligence. They provide all of this false intelligence for their purposes.
Do we restrain Israel from taking?
We shouldn't. It's ridiculous. It's an existential threat to them. Let them do what they need to based on the energy production in Iran and the nuclear facilities. In fact, Iran would already have a bomb if not for Israel. Now, the reality is, because of the death of Qasem Soleimani, I mean, Mike Pompeo has 24/7 security still then. He will after the election. Donald Trump as well. They want to kill the guy that killed their guy. They have a long memory. There's no doubt. Our security services will be protecting Trump for the rest of his life, as they should. But prevent them from a bomb so the threat to our nation does not amplify even more.
Yeah, so he's signaling what their main concern is. They're signaling their main target. Like, Trump is in danger. Trump, our beloved Trump, look at what has to happen now. He has to be constantly surrounded by security. So does Mike Pompeo from the previous Trump administration. They have to be under constant surveillance and security because of this Iranian threat. It's an imminent threat. It's going to happen at any moment if we're not careful. And then he's also signaling how worried they are about Iran getting the nuclear weapon. They're getting, if Iran doesn't have it already, I think that they may have nuclear capabilities already, and they're just not announcing it publicly to avoid a bigger problem internationally. They don't want to get the international community on the side of Israel because of non-proliferation agreement in international law. So they have to kind of keep it under wraps. Maybe, I don't know. But you can see that this is like very concerning for Israel. They are on a timer. The clock is running out. And if Iran is not able, if there's a mass bombing that the U.S. does of Iran that sends Iran back 5 years, that's great. That's enough time for Israel to complete its annexation of Gaza, the annexation of the West Bank, and to neutralize Hezbollah, neutralize the Houthis. That's what they want. That's what they want. So maybe you don't need an all-out war with Iran. Maybe you just need substantial strikes that cripple Iran and send Iran back 4 or 5 years. This is the kind of option that they're considering. But the strategic aim of that is to delay the production of nuclear weapons. But the thing is that the main issue that Israel has now is it's not enough to have a kind of mass bombing of Iran that only affects 50% of the country or even 75%, because the remainder, what survives from Iran's arsenal in terms of missiles, is something that you can't defend against. You can't defend against these hypersonic missiles that Iran has developed and demonstrated in the attack that they did back in October. That kind of hypersonic maneuverable missile, none of the Israeli systems, anti-missile systems, can handle that kind of attack from Iran. And Iran only sent about 200 of those missiles, and they weren't even loaded with fully loaded warheads. Just as a deterrent to Israel, that, hey, look, we have a qualitative military edge. We can hit your most secure Air Force base. We can hit even Mossad headquarters. So watch your back, watch yourself, and don't escalate. This is the message that Iran sent not only to Israel, they sent it to the U.S., and they sent it to the Arab allies of the U.S. and Israel. So this is the X factor, and the U.S., if Iran hadn't demonstrated this kind of hypersonic missile capability, the U.S. would have been much more eager and much less hesitant to just go and bomb as needed, or even maybe provide Israel with the weapons to just go and send B-2 bombers, send Israel everything it needs to complete that kind of mission to cripple Iran. Because you are not worried about any retaliation. You have the Iron Dome, you have the THAAD systems that can intercept any kind of retaliation attack from Iran. But then Iran shows that, no, actually we have weapons that you can't intercept. And that gives Israel pause, it gives the United States pause, and it makes these Arab regimes very scared. And they're begging, these Arab regimes are begging the U.S. not to attack. And the missiles have changed the entire dynamic of these Arab regimes in the Gulf with Iran. Because before, these Arab regimes couldn't care less. Yeah, go ahead and bomb Iran, like no problem. Because we assume that Iran doesn't have the capability to hit us with anything. Big Daddy U.S. is going to protect us. Their military bases are in our country, and those military bases will have the ability to protect our oil fields, will protect our energy production, will protect all of our sensitive infrastructure. The U.S. is going to protect us like that. But Iran says, no, that's not going to protect you. If the U.S. attacks, guess who's going to get hit first? It's going to be these Gulf states. These Gulf states are going to get, if the U.S. hits our production, our oil production, attacks our nuclear facilities, the Saudi oil fields, the UAE oil production, ports, they're going to be hit immediately. They're going to be hit without hesitation as retaliation. It's going to cripple them. It's going to cripple those Gulf states. So that's why they're begging Iran. And then what that means in terms of geopolitics is that Saudi is now much closer to Iran, doing joint exercises with Iran, wanting to strengthen ties with Iran. Saudi is considering more and more to join BRICS and to align with Russia and China over the U.S. This is very disrupting for them. All of this disruption happens. Why? Because of one little hypersonic missile. One little hypersonic missile. And suddenly you have changed the entire dynamic of the Middle East. And now they're begging Iran, or they're begging the U.S. rather, not to strike Iran. And they're basically fence sitting. They're sitting on the fence, worried about, well, if we join BRICS, U.S. and Israel are going to get upset. If we align more closely with Israel, normalize with Israel, then Iran is threatening us. BRICS is also not going to be happy. So this is what's on the table. Let's see. My headphones fell out. Try to get wireless headphones, but wireless headphones, like earbuds, they run on battery. They're unreliable sometimes, and sometimes the signal is not as good, and suddenly there's no sound that comes from them. So I've had bad experiences with that. I just go with wired, but they can be a little clunky. Okay.
You know, sometimes with a bully, and in this case with Iran, you have to punch him in the nose. That's what we did with Soleimani, and deterrence was restored. But we continue to hear from Blinken, from the president and others, darn it, we'll defend ourselves vigorously, and if necessary, we'll take action. Well, after 30 wounded soldiers and nearly 90 attacks on our bases in the last 2 years, when does this administration find it necessary to punch the bully in the nose? Because that's the only thing it's respond to. It's going to get away with these attacks as long as it can, and it's going to arm and fund and train its proxies as long as we let them get away with it.
Yeah, you mentioned those.
So this is Mike Waltz. He's the nominee for the National Security Advisor. It's a very high position in the White House. And this was the position of Henry Kissinger, for example, or Condoleezza Rice in the Bush administration. So this is very influential when it comes to foreign policy. And he's saying we need to punch Iran in the nose. We have to eliminate Iran because if we don't eliminate Iran, then all these proxies will continue to be a problem for us meaning Israel in the Middle East.
Service members who have already been injured by drone and rocket attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria. And now we're learning that U.S.-led forces began live fire exercise in Iraq and Syria after American military bases were attacked.
You know, sometimes...
Yeah, so American bases
began live fire exercise.
American bases are getting attacked in Iraq and Syria, so we have to... What is the point of those military bases, by the way, in Iraq and Syria? You think that they're for protecting who? It's all for protecting Israel, right? So that's... you can see the map of that. That's useful. Yeah, so calling for war with Iran. And then you see like these Arab nationalists that they cosplay as Sunnis, as, oh, we care so much about Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and these Shia, they're kuffar, and Iran, Iran is the greatest danger to the Ummah. Not Israel literally genociding 300,000 Palestinians and threatening to genocide millions of Muslims. No, that's not the greatest danger. It's Iran. So we need to go and take out Iran. The U.S. needs to go and take out Iran. And some of these Arab nationalists, like one of those donkeys that I debated last week will go on these programs like Sky News and say, yeah, the biggest threat for the interests of the U.S. is Iran. U.S. needs to go and eliminate Iran and do regime change. So we're going to see more of these people. They're what's called native informants. And we saw this with the 2003 Iraq war as well. We saw it throughout the past 20 years when it came to Afghanistan. These news programs mainstream media bring someone from that country that is going to be attacked, like an Afghan or an Iraqi. And the Iraqi says, yes, please come and save my people. Come, this regime is so tyrannical. I was tortured and this regime kills babies, and please come US and save us by bombing us and engaging in this kind of war with my country, because these tyrants have to be replaced. These are native informants, and we're going to see a lot more of them. There are already some when it comes to Iran. Even this kind of loser prince of Iran, the son of Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who has lived in the U.S. For most of his life. Even the Zionists are trotting him out to say, yes, we need freedom for the Iranian people. So the U.S., I hope you bomb the hell out of Iran. There's going to be more of that on mainstream media. I mean, no one's going to really pay attention. No one cares about that. The main thing is the false flag. What is that false flag going to be? That's the question that we are waiting to get answered. Okay, so there's another unhinged rant. So many unhinged rants by Zionists. They're so bloodthirsty. It's shocking the bloodthirstiness of these people. But now we saw some Christians. Now it's time to see a Hindu. Vivek Ramaswamy. Look at this guy.
If Israel wants to destroy Hamas, Israel should go ahead and destroy Hamas. If Israel wants to destroy Hezbollah, Israel should go ahead and destroy Hezbollah. If Israel and Mossad want to pull off Munich 2.0 and take out every last leader of Hamas, wherever they may be hiding, from Doha to Dresden, host a red wedding at the Four Seasons in Qatar, the next time Haniyeh and Mashal show up, they should go ahead and do it. If Israel wants to, at long last, abandon the myth of a two-state solution, Israel should go ahead and abandon a two-state solution. So
abandoning a two-state solution means ethnic cleansing, just get rid of the Gazans, get rid of the West Bank. That's what it means. Because clearly they don't mean the Palestinians in those territories are going to become equal citizens of Israel. Obviously not.
The rest of the Arab world can absorb Palestinians just as the Jews absorbed their people out of 22 countries they were kicked out of since 1948. I would love...
So mass exodus, mass expulsion. This is the definition of ethnic cleansing. The literal official definition of ethnic cleansing is that you displace an entire population. You do it by massacring a large number of them and forcing out the rest. That's what ethnic cleansing, that's the official definition of ethnic cleansing. This is what Vivek, Hindu politician in the U.S., is advocating for.
Of nothing more than for the IDF to put the heads of the top 100 Hamas leaders on stakes and line them up on the Israel-Gaza border as a sign that October 7, 2023 will never happen again. That is Israel's decision to make, not ours. That is what David Ben-Gurion would tell Israel to do. That is what George Washington would tell the United States to do.
George Washington would go and tell Israel to go and commit ethnic cleansing. Okay, that makes sense. So this guy has been nominated as well to be a part of the Trump administration with Elon Musk. So Elon Musk, that clown, has a position in the administration with this new kind of joke department called the Department of Government Efficiency, which doesn't seem like it's something serious. It's like a big joke. But when you're at that level of the richest man worth $300 billion, you can play like a practical joke on the United States and take a role, like a meme role, like a joke role in the White House when you're at that level. And this Vivek guy is going to come on board with Elon Musk. Obviously, we know that he bows down to Netanyahu and he runs his social media platform with this massive double standard, pro-Israel double standard, pro-Zionist double standard. So this is all bad news. This is all bad news for the next 4 years. So it's... I think what I was saying prior to this election months ago, I was saying that I think that Kamala is going to be better objectively. Kamala is going to be better for Muslims and Palestinians as opposed to Trump, because Trump is signaling that he's going to put all these rabid Zionists in these positions. Trump is going to go to war with Iran. That's what he was signaling. So that's going to be a disastrous situation. For Muslims, is going to cause much more death and destruction. And we'll see. Allahu Alam. But all indications are that that's what's going to happen. So we talked a lot about war with Iran and the implications of that. Really the worst thing that could happen, arguably, is that the U.S., Trump, makes a deal with Putin. Trump says to Putin, look, we're going to allow you to have Ukraine. Do what you want with Ukraine, but allow us to do what we want with Iran. Allow us to do what we want with Iran. Stop backing Iran. Let us to just do what we want with Iran and Syria. In return, you will secure your western border with Ukraine. That kind of deal, if it happens, will be a disaster, because that's the kind of green light that the U.S. wants. And people are saying that, well, will World War III break out if the U.S. attacks Iran? That's the question. If the U.S. is able to broker deals, especially with Russia, then it's unlikely that World War III will break out, because Iran will be isolated. It'll be relatively isolated, and the U.S. will be able to attack and cause massive damage, arguably, or potentially cause regime change, without there being a whole world war that breaks out. Now, it has to be a really good deal. The U.S. has to offer a really good deal to Russia, and it's questionable whether they can do that, because Russia and the energy supply of Russia's allies are going to be threatened if Iran's energy is taken out. Iran produces a lot of oil for BRICS and for Russian allies. That is the big X factor. What can the U.S. possibly offer Russia to offset that? I'm not sure. But these are the kinds of considerations that Trump is going to make if he's going to be serious about attacking Iran. They don't want World War III. They don't want this kind of multi-front war where they're propping up Ukraine, they're fighting Iran, and now Russia is getting involved. Maybe China is getting involved. They can't win that. Taiwan is also going to be taken by China if the U.S. is busy with Iran. Like, all of this is going to be a massive disaster for the United States and its control over Asia and the Middle East. It's going to cause massive instability and potential for World War III. So how do you mitigate the consequences of attacking Iran? You have to isolate Iran as much as you can. And it's just a question of how indispensable can Iran make itself to BRICS and to the rest of the world. The more Iran is connected to some of these major powers like Russia and China, then it's going to be more difficult for the U.S. to make deals to isolate Iran. That's the other big variable in this whole equation, along with the whole variable of domestic support for an invasion of Iran. And my guess is that a false flag will solve that variable, but we'll see. Okay, domestically, what's going to happen? We see a lot of attempts to shut down criticism of Israel, to shut down the pro-Palestinian protests on campuses. We already talked about that. There is larger plans in place, and I want to talk about this plan coming from the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a kind of hardcore right-wing think tank, and they were in the news, especially earlier in 2024, because of something called Project 2025. And Project 2025 was a plan for a Trump administration to completely overrun all of the federal agencies and all of the government agencies, to attack immigration policy, to attack LGBT, to attack any kind of far left policy, fight, socialism that has seeped into the federal government. That's the kind of right wing that the Heritage Foundation is. Judeo-Christian values. It's basically on that level. But they were immediately targeted by the mainstream media as being right-wing extremist Nazis. And they're discredited to such an extent that Trump had to disavow them and distance himself and say, I don't know anything about Project 2025. I'm not connected to these people. That's the Heritage Foundation. And it was a full-on liberal media blitz to discredit Project 2025. Those same people, that same foundation, has put together a project called Project Esther. Project Esther. And interestingly, we don't see the same kind of media backlash. We don't see the same people who are calling out Project 2025 calling out Project Esther. Why? Because Project Esther is all about how to eliminate pro-Palestinian activism in the United States as a whole. As a whole. So not even just on the college campuses, overall. Trump has already said that on day one he's going to pull the federal funding for any university that allows pro-Palestinian protesting or pro-Palestinian professors as activists on campus, pull their federal funding. Trump has already said that he wants to do that on day one. But this Project Esther has a in-depth plan that they've published on how they want to eliminate anti-Semitism in the United States. And if you go to MuslimSkeptic.com, the feature story right now is on Project Esther, the Zionist plan to silence Palestine activism. So this is an article written by Cryptocranium. Our brother took the time to analyze, to go through Project Esther and at the Heritage Foundation and give a summary of it and analyze it. So check it out on MuslimSkeptic.com. But, this is something very alarming because this plan is basically an all-out blitz. They want to activate their networks in government, obviously, but also in the legal field. They want to activate their networks in media, on academia, in social media, tech, finance, everything activated for this, what they considered an existential threat, because they were shaken over the past year. These Zionists were shaken in the sense that the pro-Palestinian activists have turned the public, the American public, increasingly against the state of Israel. And that's the danger, because Israel's support is what allows the Israeli government to survive, and that Zionist regime to survive. It's because of U.S. backing. If the U.S. public doesn't support Israel, then that's an existential threat to the Zionist state, the Zionist project. So we have to make sure that the pro-Palestinian movement is neutralized. How do we do that? Well, here's a huge plan. Key takeaways: America's virulently anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, and anti-American pro-Palestinian movement is part of a global Hamas support network. That's the key linchpin of all of this, is anything that is pro-Palestinian, you designate as Hamas support network. And they have to do this. This is the key linchpin. Their whole plan requires this key move. Why? Because Hamas is a designated terror organization. And as such, the U.S. government can take legal action, and even the private sector can take legal action to debank, to bring criminal charges, to put all kinds of restrictions on organizations or individuals that are seen as providing material support for a terror organization like Hamas. So what they want to do is expand the definition of Hamas, expand the definition of what counts as support for Hamas, so that all of these organizations, all of these Muslim groups or Arab groups or social justice groups can be labeled as Hamas, the Hamas support network. And once you have precedent for that in the court of law, then it's open season, basically. You are going to create a pall of silence because all of these groups are going to shut their mouths and not express support for Palestine or criticism of Israel for fear of getting prosecuted or getting their charity status, their nonprofit status revoked by the government. They're also going to be worried about their ability to travel, their ability to do banking, their ability to process credit cards, their position in social media. If what Elon Musk said when it comes to free speech, his free speech policy on X or Twitter, is that as long as it's not against the law, as long as you don't break the law, you can say whatever you want on my platform. Now, we know that that's not true. We know that he censors all kinds of pro-Palestinian content, but the way that they want to do it, the Zionists are wanting to make it so that anyone who advocates for Palestine and against Israel is going to be considered a terrorist or terrorist supporter, terrorist adjacent, part of this support network. That's going to become policy. That's going to be the law of the land, and Elon is going to have the mandate to shut down all of those accounts. They already are going to ban TikTok. Legally, they've already banned TikTok, and they've just given a deadline for TikTok to meet certain requirements to sell TikTok to these American investors, to lose control of TikTok. But the point is that then you close off the remaining loopholes for people to advocate against Israel. You create this censorship wall where you can't be pro-Palestinian on any social media platform because the law has deemed it to be hate, anti-Semitic hate. That's social media. You have the college campuses locked down. Obviously, mainstream media was never pro-Palestinian, so you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, you've basically neutralized the pro-Palestinian movement in this way, and this is how they're describing it in Project Esther. Supported by activists and funders dedicated to destroying capitalism and democracy, the Hamas support network benefits from the support and training of America's overseas enemies. So what they say in this report, let me see if I can pull it up for you. Maybe it's at the end. So, most important, like this is their most important takeaway. Can you read that or expand it like this? Okay. Most important, reflecting the true nature of the Hamas support net threat, a threat to the foundations of the United States and the fabric of our society, Project Esther cannot be a solely quote-unquote Jewish effort. It must be an American effort. Project Esther will deliberately remain American without foreign partners to ensure that nobody can legitimately accuse us of being under the influence of foreign powers or part of a broader foreign conspiracy, quote-unquote, and because Project Esther is an American effort. Participants will know doubt naturally reflect the inherently dynamic U.S. demographic, one that is multicultural and multi-ethnic and includes Jews and non-Jews alike. There is no need for quote-unquote diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have no doubt that Americans of all backgrounds will gravitate towards Project Esther because it is righteous and reflects American values. So, they will have diversity, obviously, but it's not DEI. It's not DEI. That's just because we have, drag queens who support Israel, and we have brown Muslims who support Israel, and we have Hispanics that support Israel, and we have hardcore feminists that support Israel. Like that's not DEI. That's just a reflection of the diversity of America and our righteous cause. Yeah, but the point is that, and it's so funny because they're worried about the success of Project Esther. Like this is the funny thing about it. I'll come back to this actually. Let me go back to the top of the report, their key takeaways. So yeah, they're talking about our cause is fighting back against Hamas because Hamas wants to destroy American capitalism and democracy. That's Hamas's number one aim is to destroy American democracy and capitalism. Of course, Hamas is a bunch of communists. Hamas is pro DEI and Hamas is pro diversity quotas, and they're just a bunch of socialists. Remember critical race theory? Like Hamas was pushing critical race theory across all of our American universities and media establishment. It was Hamas. So this is how they're trying to take the kind of backlash that we see, the anti-woke backlash from the American public, and put it on Hamas. The Palestinians are all woke. The Palestinians are the most pro-woke, pro-drag queen. Like it's Hamas that wants your child to go sit and listen to Drag Queen Story Hour. That was all Hamas's plan. So this is literally what they're drawing up. The National Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. This is something that already exists in the executive branch. The National Task Force intends to enlist partners in a coordinated effort to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism in the United States. So they're planning to use lawfare. They're planning to use policy to change policies, just like Trump was saying, to take away funding for these universities. This is the plan. So executive summary, purpose. We've named Project Esther after the Jewish heroine from the Hebrew Bible who saved the Jews from genocide in ancient Persia. Project Esther provides a blueprint to counter anti-Semitism in the U.S. and ensure the security and prosperity of all Americans. Okay, so because of the terrorist attack in October 7th, the anti-Semitic network has been laid bare across the world and the United States. This anti-Semitism is being pushed by Hamas globally. That's why we have to shut it down. So you can read this. Look at their vision. Our intent is to organize and guide all willing and able partners in a coordinated effort that employs all available resources to combat the scourge of anti-Semitism in the U.S. Our hope is that this effort will represent an opportunity for public-private partnership when a willing administration occupies the White House, i.e. Donald Trump. Donald Trump is in there. So that's priorities, their methods and ways. So expose the critical resources fueling anti-Semitism. Gain a comprehensive understanding of an infrastructure that sustains individuals and organizations supporting Hamas, i.e. all the pro-Palestinian organizations. That includes Muslim organizations. We have to understand their support network, their resources. Mobilize a coalition of private orgs. Build and coordinate the efforts and activities of private orgs in the U.S. to achieve the combined effect. Erode support for anti-Semitism. Exploit fissures exploit divisions within and among anti-Semites and affiliated organizations and their target audiences. So like Muslims, right? We exploit the fissure, meaning what? Shia Sunni or Salafi Ash'ari, Salafi Sufi. Exploit that. Create internal divisions. The divisions between Arabs and non-Arabs. Inflame any kind of sectarianism or national sentiment. Or if you have Christians who are pro-Palestinian and Muslims, start causing problems where, you know, you have these bots that go and insult the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad, and they have a cross in their bio. Oh, I'm a Christian, and I think Prophet Muhammad was XYZ. Similarly, have these bots with a star and crescent in their profile and some Arabic words go onto Christian pages and say, oh, us Muslims are gonna behead all of you Christians. All of you idol-worshipping Christians. We're gonna behead all of you. That's what it means to exploit fissures, exploit divisions in the pro-Palestinian movement. Synchronize coalition actions to maximize impact, orchestrate actions and activities across society in collaboration where appropriate with federal and state government to achieve the desired impact and aligned resources towards priorities. Disrupt and degrade networks and deny them resources they need to conduct and sustain their behavior. Communicate, erode support for anti-Semitic behavior, expose the individuals and organizations supporting such conduct to discourage it and laud the individuals, praise the individuals and organizations, effectively countering it to encourage others to join. So this is interesting, their risk. There is a risk both in doing nothing and in doing something. If left alone, the Hamas support network and its affiliated Hamas support organizations, HSOs, could become irrelevant or discredit themselves, although current trends and geopolitical conditions do not support this conclusion. So if we do nothing, they're going to get more, the pro-Palestine movement is going to get more powerful. At the same time, if Project Esther succeeds, it could reinforce a quote-unquote blood libel narrative, lending credence to an HSN blame the Jews mantra and expand anti-Semitism. So basically, if we're successful, it just reinforces the myth that Jews are controlling media and Jews are collaborating to shut down their critics, which, as we all know, is completely false and is a complete myth, as we all know. But what the Heritage Foundation is worried about is that they'll be too successful in shutting down the pro-Palestinians. It will lend credence to this blatant myth, this blood libel. So it's funny that they will actually mention that. Yeah, so I've already explained, like, you can read through this. It has some interesting points. Let's see. Yeah, some of the organizations that they want to target, they list, like the National Students for Justice in Palestine, the SJP, Palestine Solidarity Committee, American Muslims for Palestine, Jewish Voices for Peace, Sami Doon, financial supporters like Westchester People's Action Coalition Foundation, Westpac and Alliance for Global Justice, Tides Foundation, and Rockefeller Brothers Fund, to name a few, have risen to the fore of American public view of Hamas initiated its war against Israel and Jews. The network has been active for years, infiltrating and entrenching itself in key institutions across the U.S. They're most active on university and college campuses. Yeah, so just label all these organizations terrorists and crack down. It doesn't get more complicated than that. It's pretty simple, actually. So you also had a recent bill. The ACLU has a report on it, but it was House Bill HR 9495. Under this bill, any tax-exempt organization that criticized the government could have had its status stripped away arbitrarily by a designation that it is terrorist supporting. So in the United States, if you have a non-profit status, in other countries they call it charity status, but here they call it non-profit status, you get certain tax benefits. And a lot of Muslim organizations, masajid, Muslim charity organizations rely on that status, that charity status, for the tax benefits. But now they want to say that they want to change the law so that if you want to keep that status or gain that status, you have to prove that you're not supporting Palestinians and you're not critical of Israel. Otherwise, you're going to be labeled as a terrorist supporting, quote unquote, terrorist supporting. Now, that could have even more consequences, like actual criminal investigation or indictments. But even it's enough of a silencing effect if you take the nonprofit status away. And it's without due process because the government, the Secretary of the Treasury, can just assign, yeah, your masjid, your mosque had a fundraiser for Palestine, therefore this is terrorist supporting. You're part of the Hamas support network. Even if you say nothing about Hamas, you say nothing about any kind of organization, it's just humanitarian. You just want humanitarian support for Palestinians or for the Lebanese. Oh, you're a terrorist supporting organization, no more nonprofit status. That, taking away that status, unfortunately, is enough to prevent many of these organizations and masajid from supporting Palestine or vocally supporting Palestine. That's like the sorry state that so many American Muslim communities are in. So you're going to get to a point where many of the imams now that are going to march for Palestine and they're wearing their keffiyeh and they're going, keffiyeh is going to be a hate symbol. And we'll see what kind of social media policies are put in place. Twitch has already announced that if you use Zionism in a derogatory way and you call someone a Zionist in a derogatory way, that's hate speech. That's tantamount to using the N-word. If you call someone a Zionist. They've banned it. Twitch, that other streaming platform. So how far behind is YouTube? How far behind is TikTok? How far behind is Kick or whatever else? Facebook already is pretty close to having similar policies. So Instagram is already have policies like that. So they're going on a full-on blitz, and this is going to affect Muslims domestically. Those imams that you see marching for Palestine, are they going to march when their nonprofit status is under threat? That's a question we're going to find out. So this is why courage is needed. We have to be willing to fight back through legal means, through lawfare, through organizing, through strategy. There was no mainstream outlet that wrote about Project Esther that I saw. It was just MuslimSkeptic. MuslimSkeptic, our team, put out this report on Project Esther. You can go see it on MuslimSkeptic.com. Just today, just a few hours ago, Al Jazeera finally put out something. But Al Jazeera, multi-million-dollar media operation, is not covering things like we cover them, or they're not covering everything that is there to cover. Let's just say that. So how are we going to fight back? How are we going to organize? How are we going to do something so that things don't get worse and worse and worse? That's my question to the Muslim community in America. Are you going to just be complacent and allow things to get worse, or are you going to get smart? Because the kind of horrors that we've seen in Gaza, that's just the beginning. They want to do the same thing or worse in Lebanon and the West Bank and most of the Middle East. That's their plan. So are we not awake yet? How can we keep doing the same thing that we've been doing for decades and expect a different result? Isn't that the definition of insanity? What are we changing? Things are going to get worse, much worse before they get better. I wish I could give you good news. I wish I could give you good news. The West Bank, guess what? If they attack Iran, Israel is going to say, oh, well, the West Bank poses a threat because you have these terrorists aligned with Iran in the West Bank, so we have to clear out the West Bank and push them basically to Jordan. All the Palestinians will be pushed to Jordan. That's it. No more West Bank. No more Palestinians there either. And while they're pushing out Palestinians from the West Bank, why not take more of Jordan too? Jordan is also part of the problem. Yeah, this is all of this, like you can see the step by step. And the whole thing about Masjid al-Aqsa, once they clear out the West Bank, yeah, Jerusalem, Masjid al-Aqsa, we want a multi-faith complex. We want an Abrahamic family house. Why is it just Masjid al-Aqsa? Christians and Jews also have a sacred claim to the Temple Mount. So there's plenty of room there. There's plenty of room. You have the masjid there. You have the Dome of the Rock there. And we also have our nice little synagogue. We have our nice little temple there. We have our temple, and we have a nice little church there. This is our Abrahamic family house. It's an international site, and Muslims can't monopolize it. And they want the Arab allies that they've normalized with to rubber stamp that religiously and have their muftis, have the religious scholars in Saudi and the UAE say, yeah, this is permissible. There's nothing. The Quran doesn't say that this can only be a masjid. Show me the verse. Show me the hadith that says that this can only be a masjid. You Khariji. You're a Khariji and you think you're Ahlul Bid'ah. You're Shi'i, isn't it? You're Shi'i. You must be a Shia if you think that we can't build a church and a synagogue right next to Masjid al-Aqsa. Those are the fatwa that are going to come from Saudi. You think I'm exaggerating? No, this is the plan. This is the plan. That's why they have the Abrahamic house in the UAE right now. And they have support for that from their religious establishment, from people like Rabbi Ferris. So you have to look at how things are shaping up. Everything has a very clear direction. Everything has a very clear plan. Like everything is following a track. You can see where it's going. You can see where it's going a mile away. Allah only knows, obviously. Allahu Alam, but there are indications. Okay, I think that's good for today's episode. Let me go to your super chats and see anything else that's being said. Let's see. Amir says, why does everyone hate Trump? I really don't understand. If you were so bad for Muslims, then why did 80% of Jews vote for the Democrats? Yeah, well, that's the thing about the Jewish American Jews. They are also divided. You have the left wing and the right wing. Jews in America. So the left wing, the majority tend to be left wing. They support Democrats traditionally, but a lot of right wing neocons, they support Trump. Why? Because they want him to start a war with Iran and to bomb Iran. That's the reason. So they, in terms of his financial support, it was a lot of right wing Jews who are aligned with Benjamin Netanyahu. That's the thing. Israel also has a left wing and the right wing. And, Likud, the Likud party is on the right wing. That's Netanyahu's party. It's not the most right wing. There are even more right wing extremist groups in Israel. But you also have a left wing Israelis. So both of them are pro-genocide. Both left and right wing within Israel are pro-ethnic cleansing and taking over. But it's just a matter of how fast and how aggressive do you want to do it. That's the only difference between right wing and left wing. Not related. Inspector says, thank you, Daniel, for covering real topics the Ummah needs to hear. Also, is Hijra the solution for these problems? No. Like, how is Hijra going to solve the problem? Like, these plots and plans that are being made and you moving is not going to change these plots. Like, So I'm not saying that it's not a solution for you personally. Like maybe you personally, you have problems that are going to be solved by making hijrah to a Muslim land. For example, your children are in public schools and they would be better off in public schools in a Muslim country as opposed to the West. So maybe moving and doing hijrah is a better solution for you. Maybe there's certain kinds of problems like concerns that you have socially that are affecting your iman. Then for you, hijrah could be a good solution to move to another country overseas. But is it a solution for Zionism? Is it a solution for this kind of Project Esther, for example, or for the plans to attack Iran? No, obviously not. Brother Muhammad, I really appreciate it. Wa iyyakum for your super chat. It's great contribution. Parviz, good to see you as always, brother. Would a war with Iran cause World War III because of China's help? It depends on how well they can isolate Iran from Russia. If Russia is not going to divest or detach from Iran, then it potentially could result in World War III. Do you think Trump is on Epstein's blackmail list, and how influential can that affect his policies? Yeah, there's plenty of ways to blackmail these politicians. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. There's not just one list. It's not just the Epstein list. There's many lists. There's many angles that they have to exercise leverage on these U.S. politicians. Halal Zoomer, appreciate your super chat. Everyone can go and subscribe or follow Halal Zoomer on Twitter. And he says that there is a user, Allah Great Quran, using AI to put Allah and Muhammad's name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on paratha, like on naan and mountains for engagement farming. I haven't seen this, so I don't know, but you shouldn't put Allah's name on food, like, because you're going to eat the food. So that's not a good thing to do. By any meme necessary, cool user handle. The riba system has reached critical mass for collapse, and the rats are trashing everything to slink into hiding. This is why they brazenly took off the mask. Yeah, riba is the source of so much evil, and inshallah that system is coming to a collapse for sure. Thank you, Sphere of History. Last word says, it all seems extremely hopeless, as if only arrival of Isa alayhi salam will fix it. Jesus will fix it. Do you feel that this is all just unstoppable prophecy? Well, I always go back to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said that if you're in the middle of planting a tree and the end of the world comes, Yawm al-Qiyamah comes, go ahead and finish planting the tree. That's an extremely powerful sentiment for us to have. No matter how bad things can get, even if the demise is right at our doorsteps, we can't stop working. We can't ever get into this pessimistic mindset that it's hopeless. Why even bother? The believer is never hopeless. The believer is never pessimistic. The believer is always optimistic that he will do his best effort to do what is necessary for the sake of Allah and for the sake of the ummah. And the results are ultimately in the hands of Allah. That's the attitude of a believer. And that's our situation today. So yeah, it's a bad. We're in a bind. We see the enemies really preparing and bolstering their arms and bolstering their means against us. We have to take steps individually as much as we can to change our situation. And the Madkhalis, there is a tweet from these Madkhalis that I'll share with you. Let me pull it up. From Rabbi Ferris. You guys remember Rabbi Ferris? Rabbi Ferris says, You want to help Palestine? Fix your aqidah. Yes, it's all connected. So what do they mean? What does Rabbi Ferris and the Madkhalis mean when they say fix your aqidah? They mean don't criticize the ruler when he builds Hindu temples, when he celebrates Halloween and Christmas, and he brings prostitutes to do concerts naked on stage. That's what fix your aqidah means. It's just that one issue. Don't criticize the ruler, which, as we know, is a bid'ah, an innovation that has been invented by Saudi Arabia and these countries to religiously argue that you can't criticize their policies. But it's true. Fixing your aqidah is important. But what does fixing your aqidah mean? Fixing your aqidah that we all need is tawakkul, having true reliance on Allah. Because when you have true reliance on Allah, then you won't have this kind of cowardice. You won't have this fear of creation. You will only fear the Creator. And there, without the fear, you will take the actions that are needed because you have that bravery to, for example, work for a pro-Palestine group, to work for establishing a think tank, to work for bringing lawsuits against some of these Zionist organizations, to work for your sphere of influence, whatever that may be. It doesn't matter if you are a doctor or you're an engineer or you are a truck driver. It doesn't matter. You all have a sphere of influence that you can push back against Zionism. You can raise awareness against the genocide of Palestinians. You can advocate for no war with Iran. We do not want war with Iran. You can make it into an American message, and it's true. Like, if America goes to war with Iran, it will become bankrupted. It will be bankrupted. That's the end of the American empire. That's going to be the death knell for America. You can tell your fellow Americans, if they're not Muslim, they don't care about Iran either way, but they do care about their families. They do care about their rent. They do care about their jobs. If the U.S. goes to war with Iran, say goodbye to your standard of living as you know it. So we all have a part to play. And it starts by fixing our aqidah, meaning having tawakkul in Allah and fearing no one except Allah. That's the aqidah that we have to fix, inshallah. All right, guys, that's the show. Appreciate everyone's super chat. Thank you for your contributions. If I didn't get to your super chat, I'm sorry. We had a limited amount of time today. But subscribe to the newsletter. We haven't sent anything out yet, but we will very soon, inshallah. Be on the lookout for on the channel. We're going to release more content. As always, subscribe to the channel. And leave your comment. What do you think? I think the poll showed that 75% of you believe that Donald Trump is going to be worse in the chat. Yeah, 74% of you think Donald Trump is going to be worse than Biden for Palestine. So I agree. All right, guys. So we will catch you, inshallah, on the next one. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.